I want to send out a special message to those France and South African viewers. Good luck for the weekend. I hope your team wins, because I just want to see World Rugby at its best. Two great teams playing this weekend. It could go either way, and I think you've both done a fantastic job to get this far in the tournament, and obviously beyond as well. To all the French viewers of this video, you've done a fantastic job, your country, in putting this tournament together. I've loved every minute of it, so kudos to you for the panache and passion that you've shown for World Rugby. We all appreciate it, and it's been an absolutely fantastic tournament so far. Let's face it, this weekend in the Rugby World Cup in the quarterfinals, any team that turns up on the day could possibly win their game, right? That's how close some of these games are, and I feel that about the France versus South Africa game, which is going to be the last quarterfinal of this year's Rugby World Cup, and this video is a preview of that game. G'day and welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. If you haven't been here before, I'm a Kiwi rugby fan that's living in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. And in this video I'm going to be talking about that clash that's coming up on Sunday between France and South Africa. It's going to be a fantastic game, and I think we're really at a stage of understanding the rugby level at this year's Rugby World Cup and saying that, look, whatever team turns out and puts on their best performance on the weekend has a chance of winning their game, and I really believe that with this game between the Springboks and France as well. But there's a few things that I want to talk about in this video, going deeper into the analysis and looking at how I think these two teams could go according to the successes they've already had in this year's Rugby World Cup. So let's get into it, and first of all, let's look at the roadmap both of them have had to get to this year's quarterfinals. Now, France, of course, in Pool A, along with the All Blacks in this year's competitions, and as host of this year's Rugby World Cup, France were up against New Zealand in that very first encounter, and who will ever forget that game and the anticipation that was around that first match of this year's Rugby World Cup. Well, France came out on top, of course, as we know now, 27 points to 13. I think they did pretty well in that game for two reasons. First of all, there was a lot of pressure on them as the host nations, a lot of expectations. There was a couple of years of build up for that game, and I think that would have really played on the minds and the hearts of those French players, and I think they did really well in that game when it counted, and they stopped the All Blacks for getting back into that game. So it was a great performance on the night. So then France played Uruguay in their second game, and it was almost an identical score as that to the All Black game, 27 points to 12 on this occasion. And then it was Nienaber up next for them, and of course it was that cricket score for France, and boy did they score some exciting tries in that game. And unfortunately for Nienaber in this World Cup, they had a bit of a hard time against both New Zealand and against France. And then their last game, the Italian game, that was always going to be an interesting game. Of course the All Blacks had put a big score on Italy before that game, and were France going to be able to do a similar thing? And while I thought Italy played better in that game against France than what they had against New Zealand, it was still 60 points to 7 to France, and it showed just how good this French team really is. And I was really impressed with France throughout that pool stages of this year's Rugby World Cup. Now let's have a look at the Springboks' journey through the pool group and see how they made it to this year's quarterfinals. So the Springboks started their campaign at this year's Rugby World Cup off against Scotland, a much anticipated game in this pool, and we didn't know at the beginning of the tournament, we didn't know which way this was going to go, but the South Africans put in a dominant performance in that game. I thought their game plan was spot on. They kept Finn Russell quiet during that game, and they came out on top by 18 points to 3. Then the Springboks took on Romania, and they beat them 76 points to 0, so a comprehensive win. And then it was that big clash, that anticipated clash in Pool B between Ireland and South Africa, and Ireland came out on top on that one. And some people would say that the Springboks were just a few kicks away from winning that particular game, but on this occasion it was all Ireland, and they won by 13 points to 8. So that was a terrific game, and I think most of us in the rugby world thoroughly enjoyed that one. And then the Springboks closed out their pool competition in this year's Rugby World Cup by playing Tonga and having a comprehensive win, 49 points to 13. And we saw Andre Pollard back in the Springboks team, and boy, what a difference that appeared to make from a kicking point of view. So that was a real bonus for the Springboks, I thought. So both teams having successful pool campaigns in one way or another, and the Springboks coming up against Ireland, testing themselves against the #1 ranked team in the world, and I think that was a good thing for the Springboks. So that's how they both got to this stage of the Rugby World Cup. Now, of course, all the talk when it comes to injuries has been around Antoine Dupont, and I'm sitting here on Thursday morning before the game, and we still don't know for sure if Dupont is going to play on Sunday, but I'm pretty sure he is going to play on Sunday. He's been in training, and there's been lots of media speculation around that he's just going to slot back into this team for France. And I think as a young man who's playing in his World Cup at home, and the type of competitive nature of Antoine Dupont, I don't think there's going to be any question mark whether he's going to run out on that field on Sunday night against the Springboks at the Stade de France. So yeah, that's probably the biggest injury concern so far for France in the game this weekend. Now for the Springboks, of course, they've got Andre Pollard back from injury, and he played in that game against Tonga, kicking very well, I thought, for a guy that's been out for a while. And obviously he brings a lot of experience as well to the Springboks team, so it's going to be an interesting selection process for them. Lucano Arm is back as well, and it's going to be interesting to see what he's been doing at training and whether or not Jacques Nienaber is going to risk putting Lucano Arm into this team on Sunday against the French. Now, I wouldn't say that it's a risk necessarily, because he's got so much experience, of course, and he's such a good player. But that's going to be one of the injury hurdles that the Springboks have overcome as well going into this particular game. So it's going to be interesting, and that's all I have on my injury list at this stage for this particular game. So let's talk about discipline, and I say it in every video, it's going to be a huge component of the outcome of this game. And when I look at these two teams, I can't really separate them in terms of their effectiveness when it comes to discipline. The French so far in the tournament are only averaging 8 penalties per game, so that's very, very small amount, and they're not giving away a lot of penalty opportunities within kicking range, so that's going to be a significant factor in this game as well. On the Springbok side, they have to be very careful with their discipline. Of course, they can't afford to go down to 14 men, and that battle, that pressure they're going to go under, particularly in the forwards, I think is going to really put them on the edge of their discipline, so they're going to have to watch for that. But also I could say the same thing about the French, so I think both teams have got to be very wary of their discipline. I think the moment, the heat of the competition, what's at stake here, these are all things that add up to putting extra pressure on players, and they do things perhaps that they normally wouldn't do. So I think we have to, or the players have to, keep a lid on the pressure cooker that is a quarter-final match at the Rugby World Cup, and come out and play this with as best discipline as they possibly could. And then when it comes to discipline, we talk about the referees and the TMO, and we just hope that we get through this game without too much interjection, or none at all, from the TMO and the referees. We want to see both teams having their players on the field throughout this game, and the game to be managed in a way that's both fair and equitable for both teams. So that's the other thing that I'm going to be looking for when it comes to discipline in this particular game. And listen, Ben O'Keefe from New Zealand is a referee, so you guys have got nothing to worry about whether you're on the French side or on the Springbok side. He's a good man. Okay, let's talk about goal kicking, because that comes after discipline, of course. Yeah, if you get some goal kicks in front of the post, you have an opportunity to put points on the board. And France have been as good, if not better, than anybody else in this year's tournaments, thanks to Thomas Ramos, absolute legend from the kicking tee. He's got 19 conversions, 6 penalties so far in this tournament, and he's the tournament's #1 point scorer. So absolutely fantastic as far as goal kicking goes, and he can kick them from anywhere. So the Springboks are going to have to be careful. Anything in their half is going to be fair game for Thomas Ramos. Now, looking at the other side, the Springboks, of course, Andre Pollard is back, and what a benefit he's going to be to this team. I feel a little bit sad for Manny Lebok, because it could be a difficult situation but I think those two guys play very, very well interconnected with each other. So if Manny Leboc's going to be on the bench, that is going to be an option for the Springboks. And I think with their delay of announcing the team, I think Rassie, Erasmus and Jacques Nienaber are going through all kinds of permutations to look at how the Springboks could actually beat France on Sunday, and they're thinking very hard about how they're going to manage that bench, I'm sure. So Andre Pollard's back. He showed against Tonga, he's got his kicking boots on, and that's going to be a massive bonus for the Springboks, because before that I was going to put them behind France in this particular area of domination on the field. And I think now with Pollard back, the Springboks have exactly what they need, and if only they had him against Ireland, who knows, could have been a different outcome. So I think that goal kicking in this game is going to be pretty much neck and neck. That's how I'm going to call it. Okay, defence is a huge part of any game, and they say that it wins you Rugby World Cups as well, and I'm going to give this one categorically to France. They're leading the tournament in line breaks and ball carries at this stage, and then on the flip side, the Springboks are leading the tournament on turnovers. So you put those two elements together and it shows that France has the potential to dominate the Springboks when it comes to line breaks in this particular game and to cracking their defense. And they've just got so much firepower in this French team that we've seen in all of their previous games. They've just been so impressive. So the Springboks are going to have to bring their best defensive game to this particular game. They did it against Scotland, and they did a good job against Ireland, but Ireland did get through the Springboks defence. And I think this French backline has potentially got more talent than the Irish backline. I'm saying it here first on Inside Rugby. So I think the Springboks are going to have to really be on their defensive game. The stats are against them so far in this tournament, but as we know, on the night, in the game, if they bring their A game, they might be able to keep the French at bay. Whether or not they can do that over 80 minutes, I find that hard to believe, because I just think this French team is too good. And I think with not only their backs, but some of their forwards, the likes of Aldrit and Macalau and others in the French forwards, Wokie's been playing fantastic in open play as well. These are guys that can break through the defensive line of any team in the world. So from a defensive point of view, I think the French team's going to get the better of the Springboks in this particular game. Okay, let's move on to the potential strengths of these two teams, and I'm going to start off with France again. And I think so far in this tournament, France have been kicking the most out of any team, and that's a really interesting statistic, because they've been using that kick to their advantage, and I think they're very, very good at that. And that's what Antoine Dupont brings, of course, that great strategic box kicking, that he's able to put the opposition under pressure by putting them back into their territory and letting those French forwards do their work up front. So I see this as a huge strength for France. Their kicking and general play is going to be a big factor in this particular game. Next up, let's talk about the strengths of the French around their attacking power. It's absolutely phenomenal. They're the leading point scorer, leading try scorer through Damien Penaud in this tournament. Belbery on the wing is absolutely amazing for a young guy, and their centres, Jonathan Dante, is absolutely brilliant, and the half pairing of Dupont and Jalabert. I think Jalabert is one of the most underrated number 10s going around in world rugby at the moment. He's got exceptional skills. We've seen that with some of his kick passing, and expect that to come into play in the weekend. So yeah, I just see a huge amount of strength from the French. And if the Springboks are not able to shut them down from a defensive point of view, like they worked against Scotland and for most of the game against Ireland, they're going to be in big trouble, because I can see this French team scoring a number of tries. So their attacking power, particularly across the back line, is going to be a big factor in this game. Now, the next thing I'm going to list as a strength for the French is their accuracy. And I've watched back their games and I've seen how accurate they are with their ball carrying and their game plan, and that's going to be a big factor in this game. They're very, very accurate when they go forward, and they know exactly what they're doing. And some of those tries they've scored in their games have been absolutely spectacular. So I think their precision around the work that they do is very good, and this is obviously what Dupont brings. And he's such a big factor in this team, because he's really the little general that gets this French team going forward. But he also makes sure they stick to the game plan, and he's going to be critical for the French in that area. So if the Springboks can't get to Dupont, and I mean that in a nice way, if they can't get to him and shut him down like they did to Finn Russell in that Scottish game, then the South Africans are going to have all sorts of problems with this French backline. So two more statistical areas of dominance that the French are bringing into this game is ball carrying and collision dominance. They're leading the tournament in those two stats as well. And we all know how important it is in terms of speed at the breakdown. And the French are winning this across every team so far in the tournament. So this is going to be a really big factor on Sunday night. Who gets to that clear out fastest and is more dominant, and who doesn't turn the ball over. Okay, back now to the Springboks, and let's see what their strengths are potentially for this game. I see their kicking as a potentially good thing for this game, particularly with Andre Pollard back in the team. I think they can push the French back and take away that territorial gain from the French. So if the French are going to have to score any tries, they're going to have to be long range coast to coast type style tries, which they're capable of doing. But I think if the Springboks can play that game where they put the ball down into the territory of the French and then use their forward power to try and compete in the lineouts and the scrums and the set pieces, then I think that's the area that the Springboks are going to have the best chance in this game. So look for that kicking to be a very important component in general play of the Springboks. They're going to have to be careful also with their kicking from the back. So if Damien Willemse or Willie Leroux at 15, they're going to have to make sure that those 50-22s are a really big option for them, and they're going to have to try and bring that forward in that ball forward into the French territory. But I think in terms of that kicking options available now to the Springboks, that's going to be a strength that they can bring to this game. Now, we always talk about the Springboks and their forward power, and it's something that we talk about whenever we talk about a South African game, and it's no different in this game. They can get over top of the French if they put in a fantastic performance, and it's going to not only mean the 8 players that start the game for the South Africans, but also the bench that comes on. So I'm sure that's in the minds of Rassie, Erasmus and Jacques Nienaber as they're debating the selection of this team. And I think they need to be very well balanced when they bring in that forward selection from the bench, because if they're losing and being dominated in the forwards by the French in the second half, then they're going to have to change it up, and that means a change in game plan, and it may not necessarily mean through the forwards. So it's going to be a really interesting strategic battle. But I think the forwards for the South Africans can do well against the French, but they need to bring their A game to be able to do that. Now, another strength for the Springboks is without a doubt Andre Pollard. He's going to give that option for the Springboks to keep the scoreboard ticking over, and I think that's what they really missed in that Irish game. And again, that's no slant on Manny Lebok. I think Manny Lebok is a fantastic number 10, and that boy's going to grow into something very, very magical in that position. But right now, Andre Pollard is the guy that the Springboks need to rely on to keep that scoreboard ticking over. So I see him as one of the Springbok strengths for this game. And then the next one is game management. I think the Springboks always think out their games very detailed. I go back to that game at Mount Smart in New Zealand, and I know that New Zealand put on all those points in the first 20 minutes. But I love the way that the Springboks came back in that game, and there was only a few sections of play where the Springboks could have got right back into that game and they didn't quite nail it. But I think if you watch their game management back again in that game, they played very, very well to get themselves back into the game, and I think they can do that against this French team. So, you know, we could see a factor in this game where the French get a great start, they go out by a number of points, they've got the crowd singing and everything else, but this Springbok team is a team that can fight their way back into a game, so never write them off, that's for sure. And I think that's one of their strengths, is never to be written off. Their game management methodology, they can get themselves back into a game, and that's definitely a strength for the Springboks. And then another strength for the Springboks, if they choose to do so, they've got some real weapons of their own in their backline. And you know, I've said it in previous videos, I would like to see the Springboks going to that option a little bit more. And whether or not Andre Pollard uses that option in this game, it's going to be very interesting to see. And that's something I like about Manny Lebok, is that he runs those lines that allows his outside backs to get moving. And let's face it, on the wings and at fullback, the Springboks have some real dangers, and that can be a potential strength in this game if they choose to go that way. So I'd like to see the Springboks, once they get a little bit of territorial control, to be able to use those outside backs and score some good tries against this French team. Okay, a quick look at the potential weaknesses of these two teams, and to be honest, there's not a lot, but there are a couple of things that I want to bring your attention to. The first one is for the Springboks, and their potential weaknesses are in the lineouts and the scrums in this game, because the French have been doing so well in this year's tournament, winning much higher percentages of collisions both in the scrum, set piece and in the lineouts. So look for the French to try and attack the Springboks lineout, and that's going to be something that the Springboks are going to have to really be careful of, because I think the French have an opportunity here. Another weakness for the Springboks in this game could be around the collision dominance the French are going to bring to this game, so they really have to be on point with their clear out. So looking at the back three, Jasper, Visa, Kalesi, and whoever they put in the other 7 position is going to be very critical for the Springboks in this game. So that could be a potential area of weakness. Now on the French side, I think their area of potential is their defence could be opened up in this game by the Springboks through good strategic kicking from Pollard, and if the South African backs decide to give it a go, which I really want to see. So we haven't seen this French defensive line really pushed in this tournament so far. The All Blacks weren't able to do it, so let's see whether the Springboks can get on top of this French back line. Now another area of potential weakness I see with this French team is could be they lose their structure over the 80 minutes of the game, and if they do that, then things could open up for the Springboks. I haven't seen that yet from this French team, and I think Antoine Dupont is a very important part of that piece of the puzzle, because he keeps their structure together by generaling them around the ground and managing their game very well. But if something happens around there, then I see potentially the French could lose their structure, and the South Africans could start to see opportunities, and those opportunities could come around pick and rolls close to the maul and breakdown situation, where the big South African forwards might be able to punch their way up quickly and get second phase ball back for the South African backs to use in a very intelligent way. So watch out for that. That loss of potential structure from the French team could cost them in this game. So depth of squad in this game, and can't separate it. They've both got really great benches. If you can bring on the likes of Wardy, Jamine, Toefanua, and Mofana, if you can bring on players like that in your team off the bench in a quarterfinal of Rugby World Cup, then you're doing pretty well. And same on the Springbok side, you know, the likes of Quagga Smith, Schneeman, John Klein, Van Staden, they're all there, right? So there's no problem with depth of squad. It's how that squad's going to be used in this game on Sunday night that's going to be really critical. So when it comes to the depth of squad, I see these two teams as even. Both got fantastic players ready to come on in great form, and it's going to be a hell of a battle. Okay, so it's summary time, and where do I sit on this game? Well, I think either team can win this game if they bring their A game, and I say that about all the quarterfinals this weekend. It's that close at the top of world rugby at the moment. I think it's just a case of those little tiny things going right on the day. And yes, unfortunately, it might be a referee decision in terms of a penalty kick or something that determines the outcome of this game. But I think if we're honest to ourselves and really look at the form going into this game, I think the French bring a little bit more attacking prowess to this game, just like Ireland did against South Africa. And I think that's going to be the slightest difference in this particular game on Sunday. I think if the French are able to bring that flair, play with emotion, play with openness and play with patience, then they're going to be able to crack this South African defence. They've got the likes of Thomas Ramos, Pinot, Biel Barry on the wing, who are absolutely fantastic players. And if Dupont stays on for 60 or 80 minutes of this game, then they're going to be led in the way that they need to. And I think the French forwards can also play a significant role in helping them win this game. With the home crowd, with the passion they've got, I think this is one of the best French rugby teams we've seen for decades, and they're exciting, they're great to watch play, and they live and breathe through that emotion, which I absolutely love about French rugby. So I see France as the winner in this game, but if the Springboks can bring their A game and they can control the game and the way they want to play, and I think that's going to be through Andre Pollard putting the ball down deep into the French territory. And the Springboks are going to challenge France in this game. They're going to say, okay, you can score tries, but you're going to have to do it from your own 22 or your own territory and deep in your own half. And if you're good enough to do that, then well, that's okay with us. But I think the Springboks are going to put that pressure on to get down into the French territory, take the points, kick the scoreboard over, because let's face it, if they'd done that with Ireland, it would have been a different outcome. So I think the Springboks are going to try to improve their accuracy than what they did against Ireland, and if they're able to do that, then they definitely have a chance of winning this game. I think the Springboks learnt a lot in that game against Ireland that they're going to bring into this game, and I think that's why there's a bit of deliberation over the selection of the Springboks bench for this game. But this French team is different than Ireland. They've got a lot of flair, and they can go to that flair at any time, and these young guys have got no fear when it comes to using their flair. So tongue twisters there. But I think that's what the difference is with this French team. So it's going to be a different looking team for the Springboks to face than they did against Ireland. And I think this French team's going to be a little bit more open than what Ireland were, not quite as structured, and having the ability to take the Springboks on at anywhere across the field. So look for that spontaneity that we all love in the French play as well. That could be a big factor in this game. So there you go, that's what I think about this game on Sunday between France and South Africa, being played at the magnificent Stade de France, which was of course built for the FIFA World Cup. And what a fantastic stadium is, and I can't wait for that French and Springbok supporters to be in good voice in this game on Sunday. It's going to be an absolute classic. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to win this game. Tell me about the points that I covered in this video, whether you agree with me or not. And if you don't agree, tell me why, and put your point of view forward as well. I love reading those kinds of comments. Okay, we've got a hugely exciting weekend coming up of rugby in the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup. I'll be back once some of the teams are announced and give you my views on some of those players. So until then, stay safe, stay well, keep enjoying the Rugby World Cup, keep engaging in the community and the comments. I love it all, it's really fantastic. And please stick around with me here on Inside Rugby, and the way to do that is to hit the subscribe button and stick around for the rest of this tournament and beyond, because I'm not giving up after this tournament. So that's it for me. I'll see you again really soon in another video. Until then, stay safe, stay well everybody, keep enjoying this beautiful Rugby World Cup from France, and I'm saying bye for now.